Hi, and welcome to another episode of Nursing Your Way to Wealth, where a mental health nurse and an accountant talk about wealth creation, personal development, and financial independence in the UK to help you live the life you deserve.
Hello and welcome back to episode 92 of Nursing Your Way to Wealth. We've got both Alexes back. Just a quick apology from me, Alex the nurse here. I come down with a virus about a week and a half ago and it absolutely wiped me out for a bit. So I had to have 8 days off work and I was in no state to do any kind of recording. My voice wouldn't have, I think I lost my voice for a little bit. So I'm on the mend now and we are back. So one of the things and the kind of driver for this episode is, as I was laying in a fevery kind of stupor at 4 a.m. in the middle of last week, I was thinking about mental peace. I don't know if that's a bit weird, as you do, but I was thinking about how optimizing money, being on the path to financial independence, can really help in the times of like real need. And I felt really unwell, and I was very, very glad to be able to do things like order groceries to the door and sometimes pay pretty chunky delivery fees and it really not matter too much. So I felt a little bit of peace around that. So that's the thing Alex and I are going to discuss. But Alex, welcome back. Apologies for my delay. And I'll pass to you as well for your return on heartbeats, which involves painting.
Yes, and yeah, hi everyone, and hi Alex. I'm glad that you're now feeling better and back up to it. And yeah, my return on heartbeats for this week. So it may or may not be somebody's idea of a nice, relaxing weekend. But last weekend, me and my wife redecorated one of our rooms. So nice new paint, which is called Soft Truffle. If anybody wants to look up that on the Dulux color chart. So we did that. Just spent the weekend painting ceilings, painting skirting boards, prepping walls, painting. It's really hard work, really rewarding. And so it took, yeah, Saturday and Sunday, and I had the best night's sleep in ages on Saturday night. I think I was asleep by about 8:30. I was absolutely exhausted. But yeah, really good return on heartbeats, and the room is now all finished. Smells like new paint and looks lovely. So really, yeah, really big return on heartbeats this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's something nice about working with your hands and with your spouse as well to improve the place you live.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up on. I've just googled Dulux color chart soft truffle,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's not the color I was expecting. I think I was expecting like a darker brown or beige or something, but it's kind of in between. It looks like it would pop quite nicely against the white
Mm.
skirting board, possibly. Yeah, nice. It reminds me, Alex. Actually, I've had a book that I've been reading over the last kind of couple of weeks or so. It's by a chap called Matthew Crawford, and it's quite a long title, but it's the case of working with your hands and why office work is bad for us and fixing things is good. And I think you guys redecorating one of your rooms would fit like the narrative of the book because they talk a lot about like mental work is it's taxing both mentally and physically from a like a whole body point of view, whereas physical work it requires the same thing, but often in the opposite order. It's more physically tiring and there's a mental component rather than the other way around. But generally, he says that doing physical things with your hands and mind is both good for the body. And at one point, he says it's also good for the soul.
Oh well, I think there's definitely something to that. Because there's something quite definitely felt more rewarded at the end of me decorating than I did after most of my days at work normally.
Yeah, a 10-hour day in the office.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's definitely something there about the physical. There's definitely the feeling you get from it, and an accomplishment.
Like a testament to your work, isn't it? And each time you sit or go or walk in that room, you'll be reminded of the time you spent painting it. And there's a lot of joy to be had about improving your immediate surroundings for sure, because you guys can now benefit from that for another, I don't know, 7, 8 years or whenever you decide to redo it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, yeah, big return on heartbeat.
Yeah, good. Okay. So my idea then, yeah, in terms of searching for mental peace, it's I don't know. I don't think I've ever felt it particularly, but it reminds me a bit of when you first go on holiday and you're like, oh, I'm really relaxed now. I'm away from the usual stresses of life. I've bought myself a week, 2 weeks or so, or however long your holidays are, and just not being to be able to do something different, to do things that are enjoyable, and just to feel that general reduction in the usual pace of life and whatever stresses that involves. I think we can link that to the ultimate goal, really, which is making work optional for us and anyone else on this journey. And I'm just wondering about whether we're anticipating the piece of that, bearing in mind the hedonic treadmill and getting used to your new kind of surroundings or so. But whether I'm overdoing it in terms of whether I think it'll be this blissful kind of lull into a different type of life, whether it'll allow me to do other things that I haven't initially thought of. And I've got a little bit about kind of brain chemistry. It's not going to be too sciencey, but I will mention some kind of common brain chemicals that are involved in relaxation and just reducing kind of neuron activity. But have you thought much about it? Do you think that one of the end goals for being financially independent is to remove some of the regular difficulties we face mentally and physically in life?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point and a good topic, because I think there is that level for me. It kind of works on a few levels, but one is like there's an element of security and peace of mind that you get in a kind of short term of, if something comes up and it's a bit of an emergency, you know that you can deal with it and you don't really think about it. And then there is that kind of much longer term kind of almost what is seen as like the utopia of, all right, I have now owned my life. I can do whatever I want with it. And I think even just from recording these episodes and we talk about the hedonic treadmill and getting used to a lifestyle, it's that thing. I do sometimes think, is it going to, once we get there, is it really this blissful heaven where there's lambs springing around in green fields and blue sky always, and is it the right thing? But I think on balance, it's for me, it's the ultimate thing for me is to have the option, and it's control, and I guess control and security, there's something there with it for me, knowing that no matter what I decide to do, I've always got this fallback. I've always got a safety net of my life is paid for. I have a portfolio that gives me income to support basically a lifestyle that I'm happy with and comfortable with, and with hopefully some headroom. And I'll have a house that I don't have to pay for every month. And that for me is like fortress. And I can go out of that and go and work in a corporate. I can go start my own business. I could go work decorating. I could go do these other things. But for me, it's that there's this peace. For me, it's the peace of mind and this inner peace that I don't have to. I'm not forced into doing anything. And I think that for me is the ultimate. It's the freedom of it, and with it comes that security and control, and being like the master of your destiny. For me, that's the prize, and being able to be in a position to say with certainty what I do like doing, what I don't like doing, and having had the chance to go and experience different things to be able to do that. So that's kind of where I see it. It's obviously a huge topic to cover, but I do think about this quite a lot, as you said.
Yeah, we can probably tell, but I think you're right with it, because if we think about how our brains work, our brains are formally prediction engines. We predict what we're going to reasonably be doing in the day, and what that does, it provides a clarity and a time frame. And there's an argument, I suppose, for working generally providing people with structure, because without some form of structure, people go a bit nuts. And that is fundamentally because our brains are set to anticipate the immediate future, not far in advance, but like today, tomorrow, maybe next week. So as we've said, like thinking about what you and I will look like when we're 77 is very different from when we're 37. So our brains enjoy kind of relative security in knowing that actually, if I go to this place, I will expect this, I might see that. That is normal. If I go to a certain place, i.e., a coffee shop, and you see a guy in there playing the trombone, that's not something you would regularly expect. You can probably deal with it, but it's a little bit different. If you go to that same coffee shop, open the door, and there's just a massive hole leading down to the Earth's core, that probably would be a bit more difficult. You'd get a fear response at that point and you'd back up pretty quickly. And that's your brain doing what it's supposed to do to keep you safe and keep you secure. And that's the main role for there is that's your amygdala doing its thing, and it's just kind of ringing the alarm bell. And it's what's kept you and every generation of your family before you alive, which is the reason we can exist. And I wonder if there's part of this journey and why people, I think, gravitate towards it is because there's like an inbuilt sense of perhaps security there, knowing that, like you said, at some point your life will be paid for, your house will be your own, you'll have the choice as to whether to go and work corporately or not. And I think it gives you a sense of, firstly, empowerment over what you're going to do with your day, but also choices and freedom to really figure out who you are and what you like as an individual. I think, and certainly me, I spend so much time either at work, thinking about work, training for work, filling in kind of extra like nursing kind of stuff that they make you do. And if someone asks me like, what are 5 hobbies that you absolutely love, I could probably give them 3 maybe with certainty and maybe guess at the other 2, because I've not really had the time to try loads of different things and see if I get along with them.
I think that's really, yeah, and I think I'm glad that there's almost like a science to wanting that security and safety, and I think it's kind of wired into everyone. Like if you speak to most people, and you say, "Oh, I'm going to go and like, yeah," you say, "I'm going to actually retire early, or I'd be work optional, or you want to start a business, or you want to do something different." The immediate reaction mostly is almost of the what if it goes wrong, or well, and it's like the negative, almost like instantly is the thing, like what are you going to do all day? That you can't just do that, like, and it's those kind of knee-jerk reactions. But I guess that's your brain or people's brains, one putting themselves in that position and talking about what they're like, projecting themselves and their thoughts onto what you're saying. But it's probably them opening that cafe door and seeing the abyss that they're thinking. And then that's the natural reaction of the brain of like, well, you're safe now. Why would you change anything? Like, I know what's coming in the next few days. It's nice and predictable. Why would you change it? I guess that's that reaction.
Yeah, I know where I'm going to be next Thursday because I'll be in the office next to my desk, or I'll be working or something. And it's the unpredictability that we find difficult as humans, because if we can't predict stuff, we're wired for survival in terms of what feels good for us. So food, sleep, sex, some form of physical and mental exercise, fundamentally is what we need to be human. And if you have something else, like you say, if you pitch it to a co-worker and you're like, well, in a year's time, I'm not going to work because I have enough money stashed for this. Immediately they'll be like, well, that seems a bit weird because I can't do that and I'm not in that position. That kind of sounds scary. And then you start thinking about what you might do all day and actually, how do you fill all of that time? So I think it's certainly something that's worth thinking about. And I know we've said briefly before, it's probably a good idea to like, I was going to say titrate, but that's a nursing word, but slowly reduce like your working days, go from like 5 to 3 to 2 to 0 instead of going like 5 to none.
I think that's quite common, isn't it, with people coming up to retirement? But I think the thing for me as well is like you're almost, from being at school, you're taught to you go to school, you go to university, you go get your job, and you basically work for 40 to 50 years, and then you retire. Usually you probably got maybe 5 to 10 years if you're really lucky of being active, and then you might then just kind of you potter around until the end. And it's kind of, for me, it's that thing of most of your life is going to be spent doing something which you've kind of followed the river's taking you, and you're just doing what you probably got the first job out of uni, you got a career in that industry, you got a career doing that thing, and then it just life gets away. And I think for me, what I don't want to happen is at the end be like, oh, why did I spend 40 years like working a 9 to 5 when I never wanted to? Or I want to at least be able to be like, oh, I had a really good go because I've tried lots of different things and I know that I've settled on the right thing for me. And like understanding what's right for you and what, without sounding too like philosophical, like what's your like true calling? And it could be that actually you might get, and I guess this changes throughout the course of your life, but if you suddenly decide that, you know what, I want to paint landscapes and you turn 50 and that's the thing you want to do, well, if you are like financially independent, you've got that ability to try that and do that and follow that calling as much as you want. Whereas actually that passion of yours might be crammed into a weekend amongst all your other chores because you're having to prep for work Monday to Friday. If you've just kind of followed the normal path and not, and so I think for me, there's a risk of, it's that thing of wanting to know that I've checked and done as best as I can in my life to make sure that I've not missed out anything.
Yeah, just minimize regret in the future.
Yeah, regret minimization. Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah. It makes me think of. Have you ever heard of the book "The Regrets of the Dying" by a lady
I
called Bronnie
have.
Ware? Yeah, I was just
Yes.
looking that up, and the first point is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to yourself, not the life
Yes.
others expected. And I think sometimes we can get swept away with this, like you spend some time in education, some time in further education, or you work, and then you have distinct phases of life. It's educate, work, retire,
Yeah.
usually in that order. And if you don't truly think about what you want out of life, sometimes you can get swept away, and then you end up being 37 on a Wednesday evening at 6:45, and you're like, how did I get to 37? I swear last year I was 20.
Yeah.
And now look at kind of where you've got to. And it's almost as if we get so involved in the smaller day-to-day things, we lose sight of the big picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's what something like this makes you think about, because it means you can step out of the river, as a metaphor you use, to think, actually, do I like where this is heading? Do I want to walk a different path?
Mm-hmm.
And I always think about, I find it difficult, but I try and think about, what will future me thank current me for doing? And I don't think I've ever regretted like investing any money or anything like that in that, or doing the experience, going on the trip, booking the holiday. And I phrase it or look at it through a lens of like trying to minimize any regrets that I might have. So I just want to think about your experience of kind of the journey and mine, as we're not at the beginning, we're not at the end, we're somewhere in the middle. And if we think about how we normally feel on an average week, I think I feel some stress, like levels, as we go through the day, because I feel like I'm constantly going from thing to thing to thing. And whether that's within my working day or in my personal life, it doesn't seem to stop for me at 5:00 or whenever I finish work. There's always something you could be doing. And that, I think, takes some of your time and attention away from thinking about the bigger picture. I mean, I can always look in my garden and I'll be like, well, I could do with trimming that, could do with weeding that. I need to cut the grass, trim the hedge, plant this, pick that. And it's always, there's something there, and it doesn't allow me the space for, I don't know if it's free thinking, but when you think about meditation, it allows your mind to wander. And I don't think I get a lot of time for mind wandering in an average week. I don't know. Are you any different? Do you set any time aside for that?
That's interesting actually. Similar. I am like my weeks Monday to Fridays are very busy when it like consumed with work. I'll try and do the gym a couple of days, usually in the morning, and then try to do a run at the weekend. But a lot of the days are then like the weekend is spent prepping for the week. So like so I do like the batch cooking for dinners, and I'll make our lunches for the week on the Sunday. We'll usually be meeting up with some friends or doing something, but there is like it's a constant. But a lot of it's kind of like, well, I need to make the weeks as easy as possible. So there's a lot of prep kind of front ended into the Sunday before. And so I do think about that, but I do carve out time definitely to think longer term. And I usually do it, I wouldn't say every week, but probably every few months to like sit down and just check kind of where I'm at. Is it still what I want to be doing? But I think my mind wandering, I quite like it's when I run without any music. I just run with, I don't have a phone on me or anything. I just run me in on the street. And that time my mind tends to wander bits when I'm kind of in a nice rhythm and I'm not going too fast. It's quite nice, and my mind can just drift and go to different places and think about stuff. So I do when I go out running, especially outside. That's when I do have it, but it's not like it comes by itself. Or I don't like carve out the time to then just let my mind wander and do stuff.
Yeah, and you're giving yourself the opportunity for it, though, aren't you? And I think part of that book I mentioned earlier about kind of working with your hands, it's similar because you allow the brain a little bit of downtime to do things that it's not pressured to do, because a lot of working weeks or evenings or just general life admin, it takes up areas of your time and you have to focus on each individual thing, especially during a work day. It's almost, especially now with more high pressure jobs and more competition for work, your each kind of hour, each block of time in certainly my diary is allocated towards doing something. And there's really the only downtime I get is to eat, really. And it seems to be getting a bit more stringent from certainly when I started in the workforce kind of 15, 20 years ago. And now it's a little bit more, okay, it's 10 o'clock, you need to call that person. At 10:30, you've got to do this. At 11, you're doing that. At 1, you're doing this. So it seems like there's not much time there for free thinking and just letting your mind wander. And I think our brains need that. And I don't know, I can't explain it in any particular sciencey way, but I think I feel better after not having such a large amount of structure. And I find that a lot of weekends, I'll often do a lot of gardening and I'll just be simply doing garden things. And it allows me a little bit of relaxation, both mentally and there's a physical element to it as well. Yeah. So I was just thinking about chemical balances in our heads. And I wonder if we'll ever get to a point where we can see, maybe not in real time, but certain levels of chemical balances within our mind. So if we think about, I mean, there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different chemicals processes going on within the human body and brain, which make up us as humans. But if we think about these from a monetary point of view or a financial independence point of view, we have, and I've listed kind of 3 chemicals that were found in the brain and body. So the first one is GABA, which is it's an inhibitory type system. So it's, when we say an inhibitor, you might find certain medicines that work on the GABA pathway, and it inhibits activity within a neuron. So it makes it less excitable. So it reduces the neuron activity, and we find that mentally relaxing because it's less stimulation. And gamma's just a gamma aminobutyric acid is its long name. It does a lot of different things, and there are a lot of different medicines that work with that. And broadly, this is a massively oversimplification, but broadly, medicines either switch a brain system on or off. They excite it a little bit, so stimulate it, or they reduce the excitability. They open and close doors with locks and keys and stuff. And I'm wondering whether not having to think really hard about your finances, kind of having these things on autopilot as we talk about, whether that has a good impact on your GABA system to reduce the amount of brain space that takes up.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So you're like, because you're not overstimulating yourself because you've got fire allows you to allows you that time, then that helps you chemically. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as well, there's a point here about if you have good financial like stability, I suppose, is then you're not in the fight or flight mode. You've got a good emergency fund. You can weather the life storms. If you don't have to constantly think, oh, I've got to get groceries tomorrow, but I also need to fill the car up and I need to pay for this thing. I've only got the money to do 2 of them. What do I do? It just, if you can do all of them easily and it doesn't really change anything in your financial life, you kind of then don't have to think about it. Things become inconveniences or small tasks, not bigger problems.
Yes.
And I wonder if there's a bit more, there's a bit less kind of space for that, and whether, like, what do our brains think about something else instead? To be like, oh, there's a gap here. Let's fill it with a thought about something different.
I think there's definitely something in that. And I mean, I can certainly, if I compare myself to 10, 15 years ago, definitely 15 years ago, but like, I'm so much calmer now. And I think there is an element to most things are now, as you say, inconvenience. They're not an issue. I know that my house is in really good order. It takes a lot of that peripheral then stress and worry and thoughts away. And so you're almost in that. I read a book a few months ago. It was a guy who was he was an investor, but he talks about how he liked his mind to be like a lake and like really still. And then he doesn't like when things are, because he's Swiss, was based in New York for a while, but then moved back to Switzerland into like the countryside where it's just still. And he was saying there's just so much mental stimulation that happens in New York that I get rid of when I now live in Switzerland. And that stillness basically allows my brain, it gives it the capacity to think about the things I'm doing. So for him, it was researching companies and investments, managing stuff. So but there was almost so much stimulation that he wanted to, and that idea of that visual for me of like that still lake is like something that I still have in my head, and I really like that, and I'm going to keep using it. But it's that thing where you don't want the turbulence from other stuff rocking your lake. You want to keep it nice and still.
Yeah, level. I mean, also you can give in that example, if that you are at peace with that, you can give maybe 95% of your focus to a particular thing rather than only being able to give a little bit of it for a little bit of time. And then you can get more done, go a bit deeper into something like that. So part of it's a bit of a journey into really self-discovery or learning more things about who you truly are. And I mean, linking back to that, there's another chemical I've written down here, which is oxytocin. So that one is known as your peace and rest kind of chemical. It lowers the stress hormone cortisol down. So when you feel a bit stressed, you feel a little bit like everything's on top of you. You lose a part of your rational kind of thinking, get a little bit anxious. Oxytocin is the antidote to that. It levels that seesaw kind of in your head, for want of a better metaphor, provides a sense of safety and well-being. And again, we're back to the calmness of the lake, aren't we? If it's not choppy and stressed, we're back to peace and levelness. So you can then perhaps act in a way that is accessible to you now because of the peace. Whereas if you're fighting kind of choppiness on the lake, you can't really see what's underneath.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I definitely know that feeling of where you get that stress release and oxytocin.
There's almost as well. Sorry to interrupt you, but there's almost a thing here about the argument where someone says like sleep on a problem and you'll think about it differently in the morning. It's almost like the lake has gone from being choppy and a bit disturbed, for want of a better word, back to level, so you can see through it, I guess, at different areas of the issue. I like the lake metaphor. A lot of our things are surrounded water, don't they? We gravitate back.
They are, that's it. But that's something that's really stuck with me. It's like, oh yeah, I get that, and I can visualize that.
I wonder if it's because humans, we naturally need water, and we feel safer when we're around water, so long as it's not deep and we're standing on a cliff. But if you think about as well, all the major cities from hundreds of years ago, they're all by waterways because it's how we used to transport stuff. And we literally need it to drink. So as well, if you think about like London's by the Thames, and you have other cities obviously around the globe that are very close to water, it's because they were accessible by ships. It was in or boats for transport of stuff. It was in a book by a chap called Thomas Sowell. I think he's Sowell, Sowell. He's an economist, and I don't know if he writes about philosophy as well, but I remember it because there was a little map of cities, and you think about the big cities in the world that were good for trading. They all have waterways close by.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
The other, maybe we should, we'd add a water element to most of these things. But the other chemical I was thinking of when I thought about this briefly earlier is serotonin, which is the mood regulator. A lot of mental health medicines, certainly antidepressants, will either adjust levels of serotonin within the head. Most of them will try and keep more serotonin within what's called your synaptic gap, which is the space between your neurons that your brain can then use. So the theory is if you have more of those chemical molecules within that space, the happier you'll generally feel, because and they're known as it's known as an SSRI, so selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So we're back to inhibiting that chemical from being moved within the brain, kind of closes a door, left in the gap, so then your brain and body can use it and we can actually feel it. Theory is if you have more of it, you'll feel better. But then an interesting thing I read serotonin that actually I didn't know is your natural levels of serotonin are replenished during downtime and rest. So if we're not resting and we're constantly going, you're doing this at this time, this at this time, this on this day, well, I'm not free for another 6 months, let's pencil this lunch that we've thought about with a pal, and it becomes way, way, way later. Are we getting enough relaxing downtime for our bodies to naturally regulate our moods?
That's really interesting actually, because I
don't know if we are.
Yeah, probably not. And I think it's that place where we're in such a busy world that you're trying to fill every minute with something that actually, you need to give yourself time and time to rest, and rest isn't unproductive, I think.
No, we need it. If you think about how humans have evolved, sleep and downtime has been a thing since day dot, hasn't it? It's not phased out with evolution.
No,
we've always slept at some period of time. It used to be kind of dangerous to sleep, which is why you'd have some people that will be awake and some people would rest. But it's not changed in however many thousands or millions of years that humans have been here. So it's absolutely integral to how our brains work. And I've got a tad more science with that. So when we sleep, it does a lot of things, but the two things I'm going to mention are when we have REM sleep, we're passing short-term memory to long-term memory, hence the phrase sleep on a problem, and you'll see it more clearly in the morning. It also helps with revision in terms of putting short-term knowledge into long-term working memory so you can access it. The other thing is what happens during certainly the REM sleep phases, but other also lighter phases of sleep is when we think, we create neuro waste of cells within our brain. And in evenings and nights, mostly, we have cells called glial cells. And there's a subset of those called astrocytes, which is star because astro means star because they are relatively star shaped. And what they do is they flood through the brain from your spinal fluid and they clean all of the neuro waste away. And if you don't have that and you are underslept, it gives you a similar pattern to staying awake for far too many days, and you go a little bit wappy at that point. Hence, sleep torture being one of the most difficult, dangerous things you can do to a human. And if that's not happening and we're not getting good levels of sleep, then our brains literally do not function as they are, or as well as they could do, because that process isn't happening.
That's really interesting. So you've got all these cells going in and actually cleaning your brain for you whilst you're sleeping.
Yeah, they're known. When I studied it in nursing, they're known as the lecturer chap, a guy called Joel. He explained it as in there's in there your brain's bin men, and they come along all the different streets of your like synaptics and your neurons, and they just clean your brain. Literally, they clean your brain up and then flush that away, and they're kind of dissolved and excreted. It's way more complicated than I've just made it out to be, but it's it's the reason why sleep torture is like absolutely against kind of human rights now, and it's so damaging for humans. Um, but it explains if you don't sleep that well or you have interrupted, broken sleep, it has such a damaging effect kind of on your ability to think and think clearly.
Yeah, I definitely have had that a few times.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you just don't. When people say I pulled an all-nighter to do a thing, you're like, well, that's not helpful for your health or well-being. You're probably going to be less used to us today because you're
Mm.
just fighting like a losing battle, right, with your brain. So I'm just wondering, like, just swinging it back to the journey that both of us are on. I also feel calmer in terms of my day to day because I know feasibly something would have to go catastrophically wrong for the kind of these balances in my life to be properly upset in terms of finances, and things become a bit inconvenient rather than a big kind of headache. And I've been in both areas. Like when I was 20, 23, 24, I lived in a flat on my own before I met my wife now, and I was literally living. I had like 50 quid left at the end of each month working in a hospital. And if I had like a car problem or I had like uh, any kind of appliance breakdown or an unexpected cost, that would have been a big headache for me. Caused me a lot of stress. So I think I compare now with back then, and I really try and feel the a bit of the peace it's given me, and I find it really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I said not in a dissimilar position when I first started working and kind of moved down to London and things are really expensive and all these things. And you do worry about the money. But since being certainly pursuing FI and this aggressively over the last few years, I'm in such a calm place, knowing that I'm pretty much now don't have to put another penny into retirement, even to sort myself out for when I'm older. My wife is in the same position. Like
Yeah, you're
we,
coasting, right?
we are. So it's actually now, it takes a huge amount of weight off. Um, and then you do get this, actually, I don't know how to describe it. It's just feeling much more content than, um, than it was. It's such a different life. Knowing that,
Mm.
pretty much no matter what it is, whether we go into any restaurant, we know we don't even have to look at the prices. We order what we want. Like that's for me is quite a nice thing. Any shop, I know pretty much I can afford anything in the shop. I can afford any holiday. I can afford any flight to anywhere. It's quite nice being in that
Yeah.
position, and it's a real nice content feeling.
Yeah, I'm wondering like if you feel the same. But firstly, I'd love to measure your levels of oxytocin now compared with back then when you first moved
Mm.
to the city and you were a bit more stressed going on, just to see if there's any objective difference. But also, do you not find that when you can afford reasonably most things in life, they lose their appeal?
Completely, absolutely. That
Mm.
I found that, and I always think so. When I was younger, probably like during university, so like 18 to like early 20s, I used to subscribe to like GQ magazine,
Hmm.
which is just full of adverts for really expensive things.
Just sales, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was, I remember seeing like, oh, there'd be watches on there or bags, clothes and jackets or whatever you, and they'd be like 3, 4, 500 quid, and those would be what they'd be recommending. And I remember being like, they were so aspirational. And like, oh, I can't wait till I be that. I'm going to have all this stuff when I'm older. And then you get to the point where it's like, well, I can get any of that. Like, I'd literally just go to M&S and buy chinos and shirts. Like,
Yeah.
it's almost just completely, it has no appeal anymore. and it's funny because both me and my wife say the same thing, and it just loses it's like, yeah, that's the thing that's not going to make you happy. Like, and it's like, yeah, I can afford that if I want, but yeah, don't. They're not too bothered by it.
Yeah, does it actually have a value to me? Like, will it enhance my life massively? Probably, maybe not. And I think we're back to the anticipatory thing, isn't it? It's when I can afford that watch, when I can afford that suit or bag or whatever advert they put in GQ magazine. I mean, I've never opened it, I've never looked at it particularly, but it's always like, let's keep people wanting something that's slightly out of reach. So it may be just attainable, but when you have it, you're like, oh, I have this now, my life will surely change. And then actually, a week later, you're like, oh, it's just a shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to my other one.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. So I've definitely felt that shift. And I think it becomes less about outward, like showing stuff outwardly. I'd much rather have if I've got, you've got an option to spend a few £1,000s on something. It's like, oh, well, that's going to be that if it's a big watch or whatever, or or a car is a good example. Like, okay, cool, somebody might see me at some traffic lights and they'll be like, oh yeah, that guy's got a nice car. But yeah.
Yeah, it's the only metric you have, isn't it? Like, they don't know how you bought it, whether you owe 90% of it to the bank, whether you own all of it, how much fuel's in it, whether you can't afford tyres for it or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's just, again, we're back to like minimizing regret of what do you do with that money? Yeah, you could buy an £800 car per month, like, I don't know. And you could also drive a car that costs £800 total and not have those payments. They'll probably get you from A to B in different ways, for sure. But it's about what you value. I think for me, I used to value that kind of stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, when I'm a proper grown up and I'm an adult and I earn lots of money, I'll drive this fancy car. And then when you get there, and you can afford reasonable cars. We're not talking hypercars like supercars or anything like that, but any reasonable, accessible car you could afford. You're like, actually, it wears the shine off for me, and I don't really want it anymore. And I think you don't know what to do with the thing when you get it, even though you think it will make you happy, but actually, will it? You don't know. And I'd rather have the money in my pocket, to be honest. The freedom.
And I think that's the thing, and that's the peace bit that comes with it as well, because you almost you just extract yourself from that race in a way.
Yeah, you can view it with an objective mind. Yeah. I mean, with all this in mind, I'm going to pitch you an idea for reasonable or ridiculous, unless you've got anything else you want to mention about brain chemicals.
No, let's do
reasonable or ridiculous.
Yeah, so with all of that in mind, I'm going to pitch you an idea. So for this week, right, is it reasonable or ridiculous to spend £400 on a parasol for your garden? There is some context as well that I'll give you afterwards, but off the bat, one sentence: is a £400 parasol reasonable or ridiculous for a terraced house in Kent?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, if you're going to use it and it's good quality and it's going to last for a long time, I think because I know your situation as well, you're in a very solid financial situation. It's not like you're going to have to put this on a high interest credit card and spend 5 years paying it off.
No.
I don't think, and if you're going to get pleasure from it, then I think for me, it's completely reasonable. I think the big things for me is that you're going to use it. Is it going to last a long time? Is it going to be good quality when you use it? And I think if it ticks those, then I think I'd say it's reasonable. Yeah. I mean, I know that garden furniture can be expensive, and so I don't balk at that price at all. So I know there's some which are probably a lot more expensive than that.
Yeah, some of it's obscene.
Yeah.
And just some extra context, right?
Yeah.
So, during the heat wave, right, in England, about a couple of weeks ago, we were boiling hot, and we were sitting outside, and we don't have an umbrella, right? We're not replacing one that broke or anything like that. And my wife and I were sitting there, and we were like, sun cream, let's have a lemonade, we'll do this, we'll do a bit of gardening. It's boiling hot, and actually our dog was getting really hot as well, and she was sitting outside with us, and I was like, actually, some kind of pop-up umbrella would be nice. So as I do far too much research and not enough action with something like that. A friend of mine recently bought an umbrella, kind of parasol thing with a weighted base. Like it can go for a table, but this one doesn't. And he says it's okay. It's a bit flimsy. It was about 90 quid or something, and he sent me the link to it. I've got another friend of mine who lives on the coast who bought an £80 parasol 2 years ago. Instantly broke in the wind, and then the manufacturers are like, "Yeah, it's not our fault, mate. You bought the wrong thing for your needs." La da da. So I did loads of research, and I found this company called Bramble Crest that make like outdoor furniture, and some of it's horrendously expensive. And I do a lot of kind of learning about what I need, wind direction, weight for bases, etc. And I settle on something that is cantilevered. You can move it, it pivots and twists, so I can follow the sun. It's just to make it a little bit easier to use in everyday life. And this parasol is 950 quid, right, on their regular website. And instantly I'm like, no way, I can't justify that. I could afford it, but I can't justify nearly £1,000 on an umbrella or a parasol, no matter what it looks like. So I did some research, found it for slightly less. You can get it for 500 in other garden centres. Fortunately, my sister-in-law works at a garden centre on the coast, on the south coast, and she's like, well, let me check. We have one in stock. My boss says you can have it for 400 quid. Just come and pick it up. So I did that. And it's really good. It's really well made. It comes with a long kind of warranty guarantee thing. It's got some granite pieces that go in a metal base, and you can tell it's well made. Somebody's really thought about it. And I love it, and it's great. And it comes with a waterproof cover, etc. And I'm just probably justifying it to myself. But my thinking here is if it lasts reasonably 5 years, it's cost, 80 quid a year? Just over £1 a week?
I think it's really reasonable. I'm a proponent of spending more on something that's going to last a lot for longer and you're going to enjoy using, because I think
touch it once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. And so I think it sounds very nice, and it sounds like it's a good, reasonable purchase and a bloody good discount as well.
Yeah, I did, which is helpful. I mean, I had to collect it and build it. And actually, my mum was down for the weekend, so she helped me build it as well, which is very kind of her. And I just wondered, like, actually, two of my friends have got like £80, £90 umbrellas. One of them's broke. One of them it's okay, but it's not great. And I'd rather have something that I know is going to work and is going to work for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's not particularly windy, kind of where I live. I've got neighbours and fences on both sides. Yeah, and for now, I really like it. But funnily enough, it's had nothing but rain since I built it. So we haven't actually used it to stop any sun. But yeah, I got proper in the weeds with umbrellas. I ended up looking at ones that are made of the same material that like yachts sails are made of, and being like nautical grade stuff. And I was like, you've gone too far.
That's it.
This is £6,000 worth of umbrella. That's a bit much. So
yeah.
It depends on your point of reference, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah, and they sound good.
Cool. So we think it's
I think it's
reasonable
overall. Yeah, really reasonable. Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad. Do you want to do a summary, or do you want me to do it?
Oh, you can do it if that's all right.
Fine. It's the brain chemical
thing. It is.
Isn't
I can't remember half of those. So
fair enough. No worries. So this has been episode 92. Alex and I have talked about financial independence and it being a method or research for financial, and not financial, but also financial and mental peace. Our return on heartbeats for this week is Alex and his wife have painted one of their spare rooms a colour called dark truffle. Light truffle.
Soft
truffle, right, apologies. Soft truffle from Dulux. You can look it up online. It looks very nice. It's a nice return on heartbeats because every time they look or go in that room, they will be reminded of the weekend they spent painting it. There's a link here to the book by Matthew Crawford, The Case for Working with Your Hands. We talked about mental peace in terms of if you have a good handle on your finances, your life is objectively easier. You can spend a bit more time doing stuff you enjoy, allowing your mind to wander. We've linked it back to being a calm lake so you can see through it and see things objectively for what they are, rather than getting muddied kind of in choppy waters. We've talked about the GABA system within the brain, oxytocin, and the role of serotonin in terms of chemicals and what they do within the brain. We've talked about our brains being prediction engines. They want security, control, and that's linked back to your fear center, which is your amygdala, one of the oldest and earliest parts of your brain, next to your cerebellum, right in the middle. It's in the middle to protect against damage rather than anything else. We've talked about whether my £400 parasol is reasonable or ridiculous, and both of us have probably justified it to ourselves that it is a reasonable purchase. If any of you listening think my umbrella is ridiculous, by all means email us in, and I might ask Caspi just to stick a link to it underneath so people can have a look at it as well before they make a judgment. Alex, do you have any other thoughts, or apart from to ask anyone if they've got any questions around anything we've talked about, or they do anything particular themselves to achieve financial or mental peace, and they think we'd benefit from that, then by all means email us. It's nursingyourwaytowealth@gmail.com. But Alex, anything else? Any other thoughts you have?
No, I think that's you've covered everything. Really good summary.
I wrote it down, and I always do. If I don't write it down, I will 100% forget.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. If you think you're going to forget, write it down as a final tip. But thank you, my friend. I'll see you next week for episode 93.
Yes.
And we're nearing 100. It's taken a bit longer than I originally thought, but we're definitely going to get there within 2026 for sure.
We will. Thanks very much, and thanks everybody for listening.
None of what we discuss on the show is to be considered financial or health advice, and we recommend you always do your own research or consult an independent financial advisor or a doctor when making your financial or health decisions.